Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Late Night Snacks. It's me, your host, Emilio Villarruel, and joined by our head of hospitality, Mark Epchteine.
Hello, everyone.
How goes it over there in Bali, Mark?
It's rainy season when it shouldn't be rainy season, but that's leading to some getting through a Netflix catalog, backlog of work done, playing with my dog. So, making the best of the gloom.
I think playing with your dog on a rainy day sounds absolutely the best possible way to spend it, so I support that.
Yeah, as long as we're not outside, I have no complaints.
Yeah, it's getting a bit.
He's not a fan of the rain either.
So for those who don't know, I'm traveling around America at the moment. Currently in my hometown of Detroit, Michigan. And in honor of both kind of dry July, we'll be eschewing the typical cocktails that typically grace the late night snacks recordings, and going for something with a bit more of a regional twist, technically, literally. So this is had a little kick to it. Faygo Rock and Rye. My first time having this in over a decade, I think.
That just shows nostalgia.
Oh wow,
Straight from that label, early 2000s.
this is
Tastes like it?
I definitely didn't appreciate the flavor nuance before because this is. I'm gonna do my best to sorry put some context to this flavor. So, uh, for a bit of reference, Rock and Rye is actually a reference to a prohibition-era cocktail that happens to share the same name. Um, it tastes kind of like there's almost like a red hue to it. So it's not quite like a cola, but almost like if you mix like a red soda and a Dr Pepper together with a little cream soda.
I appreciate the Dr. Pepper flavor. That is one I savored that we just do not have in Indonesia. It's like one of those things. It needs to be like hand carried in. Anyone watching in Bali knows where to get a Dr Pepper. I'm all ears. That it's on the rare list.
It's one of those I that is one of those things that just never occurred to me that would be very difficult to find abroad.
I think it's just such a unique flavor. Like you need a demand for it, right? Like people go to a restaurant. It's like Pepsi, Sprite. What else is there?
Mountain Dew,
Um,
but
Fanta. Yeah, like the orange. No one's ever like, can I have a Dr Pepper with my nasi goreng in this Indonesian restaurant. So they carry like that typical set of like Coca Cola or PepsiCo products, but I don't think Dr Pepper is just like in the realm of things that get exported the same way.
that's fair. I feel like root beer is another one that doesn't get a lot of love.
Yeah, we have like local root beer like brands here, but not the A&W typical U.S. ones.
The it also so I went on a bit of a Wikipedia rabbit hole when I looked at. I was like, well, let me go ahead and if I'm going to talk about it, let's talk about the history of it. And there was some history I knew about it, some history I didn't know about it. So it's a Detroit originated brand, but the original flavors were actually inspired by cake icing. So that
Huh.
the founders were Russian immigrants who were bakers, and that's what they used as the inspiration for their first line of sodas. Um, Took off. This became, I think, their fifth line. So, and it's still in production, Rock and Rye. Um, and they've been around since the 1900s. I guess it doesn't really mean too much if I say it like that. Since the 1900s. Me too. But I mean, as in like 1908, I think. So it's a little bit more significant. Um, but
Does it have regional connotation to Motor City?
yes, and I was going to get to that. So there's it, the tie is somewhat controversial, um, in that so a lot of I struggled to find this number and I really wanted to. A significant portion of Fago's market share is actually attributed to fans of a specific music group. Are you familiar with this?
Uh, I haven't even heard of Faygo before this, so I'm all ears.
Okay, so there's a. I love this. I love that I get to intro this to the world. Um, so there is a music group called the Insane Clown Posse, and they originate in Detroit, Michigan. For those unfamiliar with the Insane Clown Posse, um, they dress up like clowns. Kind of fit into the murdercore genre of hip hop. Uh,
I think that's getting very niche. The sub niche to the niche.
they're I think of all of like let's put it to you this way. Their subject matter would be the kind that's like a little dark for Eminem. Um, so they're like people who are fans of Eminem look at Insane Clown Posse as like a oh that's kind of like the darker stuff. Just to give some connotation in terms of the impact on the Faygo brand. So it's such that or that the Insane Clown Posse has done this thing where they take a bottle of Faygo, shake it up, spray it at the crowd, and call it a Faygo shower, which to me sounds absolutely horrendous to be covered in soda for the duration of a concert, but I digress. Um, and I was reading something where they said they go through like 302 liters just on an average show. So it's I know I'm struggling to get through this
I'm
just because of how incredulous it is, but yes, this is all the case.
I'm picturing the marketing team behind this never having had any awareness of their popularity within just this like subgroup of like super fans, and all of a sudden they're just setting up some kind of like free tasting outside of like the local library, and before you know it, you have a line of 500 insane clown posse fans in costume, and it's a realistic sight in my eyes.
Oh, yeah, I mean, think of so. I actually was reading an article with a quote from the head of marketing, so I know exactly how they feel about it. So think about it for reference. Their previous mascot was like the Fago Kid or the Fago Cowboy Kid or something like that, which was real old timey, like hey, I want a Fago before I giddy up. And then now the guys who want to do a Fago co-branded soda and are like, yes, let's go hang out with meat cleavers and paint our faces, and they're like, I'm sensing just a little, brand disparity there.
Brand disconnect.
But
Little PR can fix that.
no, it's incredible. Like people from Canada will drive down to Michigan just to pick up Fago. It was like this really regional thing until they modernized their water filtration processes, expanded distribution, and kind of the rest is history. In no small part thanks to some musicians with colorful lyrics, we'll say, and colorful faces. How about that?
I love that like one little brand like this can just find themselves in us and you being in Detroit, me being in Indonesia, talking about this pop soda that got infiltrated by Insane Clown Posse.
It's fantastic because there was a quote that I was looking for by the CEO of Vago who's just like, guys, we'd prefer if you drink it. Like this is what it's designed for. It was intended as a beverage, not for showers. Let's not do that, please. Thank you. Um, but
They're probably on the same page there with some champagne brands that are like, come on, there's 100 years of craft behind this. It shouldn't be just splashed around. But on the reverse, the champagne brand's made for spraying and waste. So there's a market for it.
I mean, from a marketer's perspective, I would just say take the win. If you got the consumers going for it, but in some cases, I can understand the brands not we'll say properly acknowledging the shout out, if you will. And I'm curious, Mark. So and I do have another beverage as well, maybe for later in the show. That's another Detroit regional specialty. But I'm curious, what do you have on deck for to keep you quenched?
Yeah. So this really lines up with kind of dry July. It's usually used in non-dry cases. We have a little can of Picari Sweat, something viewers probably have seen throughout Southeast Asia. Um, For me, my first exposure to it was Indonesia, where it's commonly paired as Southeast Asia's take on Gatorade after a night out. But it really extends to I'll go play some paddle or some tennis, and this is kind of what I bring with me to just quickly rehydrate after. I had COVID last week, and kind of same here. Just ordered a case of these to my house, and that's like my hydration drink. That they say it's like the ions that match your body's fluid composition as closely as possible. So it's actually a really interesting story behind it. The company hails from Japan,
I love.
and a
I
pharmaceutical.
was just saying, I love the quick like. And here's the story of it. I'm like, this just looks like a commercial. That's awesome.
I've been talking a lot.
That was just picturesque. I'm sorry. Continue.
There was a pharmaceutical employee for I forgot the company name, but a Japanese pharmaceutical company in Japan, and he ran into some food poisoning sort of symptoms, and he noticed that there's a medical application to um, having this IV sort of drink that really rehydrates you, but it's in some kind of pouch and in a medical setting in the 80s. And the guy's like, what if there was just like a consumer drink that rehydrated someone? Curry sweat. And then he made it. And Gatorade had too big of a market share in the US. So their focus was just Asia as a whole, Hong Kong. Do you have it in Taiwan?
We, I think so. It's one of those things I'm so used to seeing that I don't like. I don't know for sure, but I assume it's there.
Yeah, I think they have like a sizable grasp throughout Asia, and it's one of the first drinks, non-alcohol, non-alcohol drinks that crossed $1 billion in export sales out of Japan because of its popularity. And then being here in Indonesia, they had, I think, when it really took off here and became the kind of the rehydration drink after a day out of drinking or a night out of drinking. It really came through medical use. So dengue is very common here, which is a mosquito-borne disease that really dehydrates you on top of many others. And there was a big dengue outbreak in some regions here in Indonesia, and the company saw it as a good marketing push as a rehydration drink for like the whole country that was experiencing this big dengue outbreak in 2013. So I think that was like a big boost for them domestically here.
Huh. That's a.
And just a nice.
Go ahead.
No, no, I feel like it's anytime I ever feel tired, 95% of the time I'm just haven't been drinking enough water or haven't been mindful of it. One of these, and I'm back at it.
Again, he just times his drinks so perfectly to for commercial like clips. If is this sponsored by Picari Sweat, or are you getting money under the table for this?
It's not, but beer brands, wine brands, I am open to ambassadorship.
Mind you,
Just gotta plug myself in there.
the side eye isn't because I'm bothered by it in the sense of hey, you shouldn't be doing this. The side eye is in the sense of how do I get in on some of this action? I'm like gin brands. Let's go. We'll talk about it.
It's an OrderEZ partnership.
Exactly. We all win. Goodness. So, kind of going into that and thinking about the success of, we'll say maybe unlikely successes of, Pocari Sweat and Faygo and kind of their respective markets. Um, it got me thinking, and also in alignment with, and if you're watching this now, hopefully you get a chance to check it out. Jeff put together an article on kind of how to find success and how to build up a launch pad for success when you're on kind of the distribution side of the business or kind of more on the we'll say B2B aspect of F&B. But kind of wanted to open up the discussion on more of an the side of kind of the restaurants, the cafes, the bars, etc. And for those that don't know, Mark actually has a little bit of success in working with some restaurant groups and such. So I thought it would be fantastic for him to weigh in on this one.
Yeah, more than happy to. So just a little background there. Being based in Bali, it's a big tourism economy with a lot of just kind of dynamic F&B concepts and brands coming on. So I've done some kind of strategy and marketing work more so navigating the COVID times, and how to kind of succeed in these limited market conditions at the time. So I'm happy to talk about some creative things we did back then.
Fantastic. So, one of the things that kind of stood out to me, and when I was thinking through and kind of discussing with Jeff, and as I read kind of what he had put to paper on the supplier side, was kind of the topic of personas, because as a marketer we think about those personas as well, and it's kind of like standard fare, marketing education, or how it's imparted on, to think through those terms. And so I started kind of thinking about that in the sense of relevance, and to a restaurant and to a bar. And I think that, having worked in a restaurant before, I don't really see anyone kind of thinking about, like, what does our ideal customer look like. They just think about, how do I get the most customers, which I understand that you want that as opposed to this, but you only get that by focusing on kind of the ideal customer. We'll say, in many cases, but that's kind of the thesis to my initial thoughts on it. What's your kind of spot take on that?
I'm gonna put a little interesting metaphor to it. I've always been told that a good DJ plays a song that you want to hear,
Mm-hmm.
but a great DJ plays a song that you didn't even know you wanted to hear. And that's kind of where whoever is designing this concept, building this menu, curating this experience for a restaurant or a bar or an outlet, they're creating something of that nature that you didn't even know you wanted, to an extent where you're captivated by it beyond, like, oh, I want to go to this restaurant, but they're actually hitting a higher accord with what they're doing. And that all starts for creating that persona. You're not going to just be able to slap something on a dartboard and curate it that way. So step one is identifying that persona and kind of working to that. And then other people that didn't even know that's what they wanted gravitate towards your kind of ideal sentiment of what you're building. Here in Bali, it's a tourism economy, and really commonly you just see Instagrammable, fun, well-designed cafes pop
Mm-hmm.
up. But at the end of the day, they're the same thing and the same iteration with just a different twist. But then you see something brand new pop up that I didn't even know I would want in Bali. One actually being, I am going to murder this name, Chung King out of China.
Okay.
Chongxing.
Chongqing.
That region's noodles popped up in this like lamb noodle shop, and it's just like there's so many noodles around me, but it then I've never just come in contact with that, and I didn't know I wanted it, and now it has like this rotating craving of mine in my like noodle
Mm-hmm.
rotation. But then you also see it on some of the more higher end concepts where I lived in the Koreatown area of New York for a while, and I'm really familiar with Korean
Mm-hmm.
barbecue. Um, and aside from one place in Korea that has like a Michelin star, I've never been to like an alternate twist. Sorry, in New York, not in Korea. Um, that has an alternate twist on Korean barbecue, but there's a restaurant here called Sijin that just curates the experience perfectly, and but it is actually more of a steakhouse than a Korean barbecue place.
Okay.
So it's a Korean barbecue steakhouse, which it's unique to its kind. And I think the only way you can get to a place like that is by building this persona of who do you want to serve, and then building what you want to serve them. Was the concept is the concept built around that persona?
I think that you hit the nail on the head with the DJ metaphor. Honestly, I love it, because as you're talking, I really got me thinking about my own experiences, and, like, I feel like the good meals are when I'm like, man, I'm craving X, and then I get X. But the great meals are, it's just like, and then I was like, oh yeah, let's go ahead and stop by, and then whoa, something kind of hit me out of nowhere where you weren't expecting it. And I think a lot of that comes into the idea of, like, when you really get that good synergy between, hey, this is the kind of place that I would look for, and they've now put themselves in the positioning via marketing, decor, menu, that we're in alignment and it's creating a great experience. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to like a deep house DJ and you're a fan of reggae, you might be disappointed. He might play something in your direction, like the dessert might be good, but chances are you're not kind of in tune. But if you're like looking for a certain cuisine and then you just like come across something ultra niche, chances are that's where that element of surprise or something new and creative and kind of the framework and the mind of the chef is then put forth on you. And that's where you're like, wow, I wouldn't have expected XYZ or ABC.
And so to give a peek behind the curtain, later on, I do intend to discuss some controversial food opinions in the form of our food fight segment. But I want
My
I
favorite.
want to maybe lead with one that I didn't include for this segment, but that um, kind of comes to mind when we're discussing outlets and focus and personas. In that, if I ever see two different regional cuisines on a menu, of the same place, and it's not a fusion place, my radar starts going off for this might be a bad idea.
I guess in Asia we come across that a lot where it starts with an Asian menu and then digresses to your Western options.
Um,
I've seen it
in
work.
so okay, I'll explain the context as to what I was thinking about with this. I saw a so the Detroit equivalent to a diner is a Coney Island, and I saw a Coney Island that sold, in addition to standard Coney Island fare, which generally includes gyros or gyros, as part of kind of the Greek tradition of a lot of the immigrants that came over and started the Coney Islands. This place also did burritos and pizza, and I feel like when you're getting to when you start to stray away from the specialization, and granted, maybe I'm contradicting myself because who knows? Depending at the right time of the day, maybe it's exactly what the people going there want, just to have that variety. But I don't know. It seems like a step in the wrong direction culinarily, at least when it comes for me when I'm looking at menus and trying to figure out where I
Yeah.
want to go.
I think it's like what lens are you looking at it through? If it's like that lens of like fine gastronomy or it doesn't even have to be fine dining, but just like a well curated menu. Like all I have when I go to Cheesecake Factory is anxiety and then some pretty good pasta. But when I'm given a menu and there's like six sharing plates, five apps, five entrees, and two desserts, well, am hopefully with a group of friends where we're just ordering everything anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that I'm steered in this more like narrowed in direction, and it makes my experience more enjoyable. But I know their focus on is on these few limited items, so hopefully they're pretty damn good all around because it's so narrowed in that it gave the kitchen or the bar an opportunity to kind of fine tune it more than a larger menu that features kind of like those multi-dimensional approaches to like the items on the menu.
Absolutely. And again, I think it only happens when you have that specificity, and I think you can only get that specificity when you just take the time to think about it. Just and really like I've heard marketing personas taught in ways in which it's like, you have to give this person a name and picture them in your head and envision, what your persona looks like. But sometimes it's just
The target market audience and all
and,
that.
and I think that kind of talk turns people away and it turns people off because they feel like, okay, this is just fluffy marketing talk. Like, yeah, sure. Like, if I make good food, people will come. And there, maybe some validity to that opinion. But there's also just some real kind of brass tacks truth to, hey, this is part of the education. This is part of kind of the standard spiel for a reason. And if you look past all the like, all right, we'll name him Bob, and he's wearing a sweater vest, and this is we don't need to go into all those details, but you just start thinking about like what type of person, what are they doing, what food do they like to eat? Are they someone who's a hearty eater who's looking for some solid fare? Are they looking for someone who's trying to go for like a dainty gastronomically creative like experience that's going to be just different for them? Are they and then start thinking about, okay, what kind of aesthetics do they like? Okay, well, hey, if I think that, let's say in case one, for example, codename Lumberjack, and case two, for example, codename, um, Artist, uh, you can kind of imagine, hey, the decor is going to point to two different directions depending on who you want to serve to. And I think that a lot of places I've seen don't seem to have given it that forethought beforehand, or seem to have maybe lost that focus at some point along the line.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a. Yeah, I think you hit it perfectly. Where it's somewhere between those two, whether they start out with it and they lose the focus, or they just initially um, didn't have it. And I think that's what kind of separates. I don't know if there's like a data way to prove this correlation, but a lot of like long term success. Because at the end of the day, you're still using that information and that ideal persona to that's what drives your marketing campaign. That's what drives your strategy, your branding, any changes that you're doing. If the CEO of Sweet Green all of a sudden said, "Hey, we're serving alcoholic slushies at the takeout of our Sweet Green," the marketing team would just like lose it. Be like, "What? How, what?" It would just wouldn't make sense with brand strategy, with corporate strategy, the suppliers. It's all like sourced from these farms, and all of a sudden you have these like syrupy slushy. Like that's obviously an extreme example, but if you keep that in mind, I'm sure there is a way that Sweet Green can somehow employ some very locally sourced alcohol into like some takeaway options and some like premium outlets. Like you know what I mean? There's a way of doing it the right way, and it will, even though that's still a very extreme example, um, it still requires you to kind of have that lantern focus. It doesn't need to be completely like closing on a persona, but it does need to be kind of like that lantern like consciousness to this is still who we are gunning for and aiming to serve, and that's kind of been the backbone of what we focused on. And it's worked and it's grown. So why digress?
I think that you kind of like, and the Faygo example to me really stands out kind of in comparison. Granted, Faygo being, kind of a beverage distributor, not a restaurant, bar, or cafe, but in the sense of they had a situation where, hey, we don't have any brand like cohesion or synergy with obviously the Insane Clown Posse, which is it's like such an extreme example to the point of caricature. Um, but such that their way of going
At least yours is real.
and kind of their way of threading that needle is just to say like, hey, we would just rather they didn't spray it. We want people to enjoy the flavors and whatnot. That'd be swell. As opposed to, they're not kind of pushing back, and we've seen this with other brands, other luxury brands and whatnot. If they don't like the way that the product is being consumed, they'll push back on it and say, hey, we want nothing to be associated with it. Fago's taken a bit of a lighter touch, which I appreciate the intelligence of it, because at the end of the day, I've seen these people, like, they love their Faygo. You don't want to ever turn someone away who is really into your brand. You know what I mean? I mean, it's not my type of music.
Yeah.
I can't really get into it. But hey, you know, by all means, if you're buying cases of it, please continue to do so and listen to whatever music you want. In the case of your, fictional example of like wanting to maybe set up that kind of like synergy or type of partnership or something, well then I think you can still do that even if you were to go about it and say like, hey, let's start talking to local influencers and get them to talk about like, this new recipe or this new trend of mixing, sweet cream with vodka and blah blah blah, and then that becomes a thing somewhat organically that they can still tacitly support and receive the benefit of, but also not kind of dilute their brand or cause their marketing and PR team's heads to explode when they're like, yeah, we're going to go in this direction.
Yeah, and I think it's just there is like the balance point, but it just requires kind of that original reference and focus, which and you do whatever strategy you employ, you do whatever you can to preserve that.
So I'm going to take this break for two reasons. One, I can't stop drinking that Rocky Rye. It is just, or Rock and Rye, sorry. Sacrilege. Um, but I also wanted to make sure I hit the note of another drink because I think it's got its own unique and pretty interesting story to it. So this is Verner's, which is a ginger ale, and yeah, this one I'll be honest, I'm not a general fan of ginger sodas. I got this specifically for filming, but we're gonna get into this one as well. I haven't had this in I couldn't even tell you how many years.
It almost looks like the mulled beer, kind of like the 40-ounce packaging.
Sorry, you're witnessing real confusion at work. This does not taste like I remember, and this is I don't know how to place this taste. This is not. I'm not acting. This isn't for the camera. I'm just. There's some general confusion there. It's not bad. It's not bad. I'm trying to discern if it's due to the.
But it's not good.
Give me a second.
I'm gonna go for a quick second Pocari sweat. Keep my hydration levels up.
It. I don't know what situation or scenario I drink this. It's one in which. So, for a bit of context, Verner's was actually done by a Detroit pharmacist, and it was originally
A lot of pharmacy and beverage synergy here.
originally done as one of those kind of like cure physic type drinks, and then pivoted into becoming a well known beverage brand, such so that uh, I didn't actually realize that Verner's was named after the pharmacist. I thought it was after the street. And I imagined it had some ties to the local street. So now I have to do some more digging later on and try and figure out what I imagined was the street being renamed after a popular beverage, which is kind of entertaining. But I could be wrong. So I still this is still for up for some internet sleuthing.
You got a big regional beverage rabbit hole to dive deep into.
Detroit has so much regional like cuisine and food beverage stuff. I mean, I touched on it a little bit in the article that we wrote for Detroit, but goodness, I'm having a difficult time keeping the calories down. That's all I'll say.
Same problem when I head back to America and encounter those portion sizes. Beverages aside.
I we'll move on from this, but the beverage sizes here they look like they're meant to perform baptisms in. Um, it's but hopefully and transitioning on from this, you are more knowledgeable in things such as the restaurant and cafe marketing, as well as some other subject, which I'll quickly broach into, more than I am at internet sleuthing, since I've yet to discover the origin of that street. One of your unique talents, or hidden talents, we'll say, is actually a bit of, we'll say, familiarity or sophistication in kind of blockchain, and I believe you're touching upon that in a hopefully coming soon article, if we can get out the
Yeah,
door. Hopefully coming soon
should be
article.
ready to rock shortly here. But yeah, it's something that I think we've seen it in our media kind of at all scopes, with their financial markets or the hype of NFTs and kind of like the gaming elements. If you've watched any news, it's come across in some point. And I feel like its ties to financial markets and as an asset really doesn't give it the light it deserves from a technology perspective. So in the last couple of years, we've seen F&B brands, whether it's distributors, producers, restaurants, kind of take on this like tech approach and build tech stacks, whether it's their POS systems, inventory and order management solutions, staffing solutions for HR, and just making sure everyone shows up on time. Tech's kind of infiltrated kind of all the reins there. Um, and blockchain is kind of what I believe will be the next to enter some of these tech advances within the F&B space.
And can I stop you there, because what I think is a bit of a common problem, and I'll go ahead and reveal my ignorance in this. This is something I don't know a ton about. So can we kind of take a step back and just sort of explain, like, when you're thinking about NFTs and cryptocurrency and blockchain traceability and all these different things, like, it makes it very difficult if you don't actually know what it is and how the technology works to figure out how these are all sort of tied to the same thing and related. So can we go maybe like a bit
Mhm.
top down, just to kind of how this stuff works and why it's important? Granted, I know it's a big ask.
Yeah, it's one of those that I think the best way of knowing you know something well is your ability to explain it to a second grader. Which I don't know if I'll hit the dime here, but I'll try as best as I could. And I think the number one question is it's like, what the hell is a blockchain? And it's not a physical blockchain. But the easiest way I could put it is it's a big kind of open source ledger. So picture an accounting ledger of transactions, and it runs on a network that is connected by millions and millions of computers, participants within the blockchain.
Mm-hmm.
They're not doing this for giving their computing power for free. They're giving it for in exchange for something. So they're hosting this open source kind of platform for a cryptocurrency. So the reason Bitcoin runs is because you have these millions of computers, miners, basically talking to each other to allow the validity of the blockchain. So anyone at any time can look into it and see that everything's kind of been validated. There's no way to like erase something and put something else in. So from a traceability perspective, it's just a very secure but also well distributed kind of ledger for traceability from, say, farm to that final avocado that gets to Walmart and then eventually in someone's hands. And it's still the responsibility of each kind of um, cog in the wheel of that supply chain to do their part and maintain that traceability of the links in the supply chain. And again, the actual technology that goes behind this goes over my head. But it does allow for kind of some fixes to some solutions. So when crops are impacted by weather, that can all kind of be traced into what lots of crops to kind of make sure. Same thing with like product recalls. Let's say the unfortunate side of our world is there's a lot of different like chemicals used within farming.
Oh,
Let's say
I have a great
one event.
example for you. From Faygo, uh, when they were sent, I believe, pineapple extracts for their premium soda line called the Royal line. Um, they did a line of kind of like pineapple punch sodas, but because the pineapple extract wasn't purified, the bottles exploded on the shelves, which yeah, led to a bit of a recall, as you can imagine.
Yeah, and if it's like there's one responsibility within that supply chain for that action to be performed, you can trace it back based on kind of this technology. And I know Walmart requires every leafy green supporter to have end-to-end traceability. And my guess is in 2022, the cheapest way to do that is through some of the various blockchains. I know VeChain out of Singapore has been one of the bigger ones in the F&B space. But it also stems way beyond kind of supply chain. I know that's been the buzzword of 2022 with our political ongoings, but we can talk about fake alcohol. I think the statistic is like 30% of alcohol out there is considered fake. So let's say you're Tanqueray gin and you want to make sure that the proper gin is getting into the hands of the
Mm-hmm.
consumer because between parallel distribution, gray market distribution to just straight on fake production, let's say you're in Egypt where the alcohol market is kind of underground but exists, kind of the same with like Saudi Arabia. There could be a manufacturer buying Tanqueray bottles from China, filling it with just any gin kind of
Whatever they come
recipe,
up with.
compound gin that they make. bottle them, and you'd really know no better if they're putting in the money to kind of package it the same way. But what blockchain does is it allows you to verify the authenticity from the direct distributor. So that kind of solves that issue, and it's a very cheap fix. And it also then gives the power back to the distributor to ensure that their product is authorized and kind of like verified in the market, and the amount of safety like issues that can go with that. Let's say there's a lawsuit because of some fake alcohol harming someone from health, kind of ensuring that traceability, authenticity nature um, kind of solves a lot of this. And you're seeing this everywhere from kind of like high end sneakers, designer goods, car parts. So it's something that we'll definitely see pop up more. And then the other side is really, I think, as a marketing individual, you like this, but helping kind of build that brand story, brand appeal. So through kind of QR codes and NFC chips that work with the blockchain, there's a lot of marketing campaigns being run through. Hey, let's say you scan the top of the cork on a wine bottle, you get like special access for, hey, thanks for scanning, and it allows companies to elevate their brand profile through just fun, interactive stuff like that. I know Penfolds did kind of an NFT drop where they actually had like limited edition bottles with corresponding NFTs, and just that kind of for any brand that has like super fans or like collectors or those people that are really invested into the brand, they jump on things like this, and you see it from watch manufacturers to actual pieces of like photography art now having a corresponding digital asset with it as well, where it's sometimes becoming the norm in some of like the fine art purchases or the digital art purchases where you're receiving a physical and a digital. So if you're collecting wine, I don't see if like in 10, 15 years from now, so many things are in the digital world and you have this NFT you got in 2022 and it's aged 15 years. Again, a lot of it comes down to kind of intrinsic value. And this is a really big conversation and a can of worms that can open in many directions. There's other podcasts that kind of take a deeper, more authoritative dive on it. But if you're a brand that kind of has that exclusivity and that brand appeal, I don't see why you wouldn't kind of at least attempt to join in the NFT side and the creative side of blockchain tech as well.
But I mean, why would you listen to those other podcasts? We're way cooler. You have nicer hair. It's we're the better choice. But no, and it's kind of
True.
so you got me thinking with kind of your explanation in kind of a few different regards because I'm again my perspective kind of a bit more in trying to interpret this from the lens of a bit more of an everyman paradigm. I'm thinking like, well, okay, how can this be applicable? When would I want to buy into this or kind of participate into this? I've definitely lived in countries where the alcohol was of questionable veracity, so I think that it'd be fantastic just to have like a QR code right on the cap to be able to, verify, hey, this batch is specifically, lot number, et cetera, et cetera. And then also kind of more the NFT kind of less actual traceability, more novelty, I guess, side. I
Mm-hmm.
think so many of these.
But even think of it from, I think like with the traceability, the most common one that someone can encounter is you go into a Whole Food and there's products labeled organic. And was it you and I talking about this at a different podcast? But it's like organics just turned into like a marketing ploy where if you hit the boxes, you can get that certification. But if people truly care about where their organic produce is coming from, this kind of end-to-end traceability is like, oh, this is actually,
From
they're
X
not just
farm
approved
or
to receive these seals,
Y
it's coming
orchard.
from an organic farm. Exactly. And if it's, you can kind of, as an end consumer, having that optics into kind of things that could be like discrepancies like that, like marketing organic versus truly organic, I think that's going to be a really big one that's going to begin popping up with the kind of like the more common adoption of blockchain traceability.
Well, and mind you, I'm with you on that. But actually, what I was thinking of is actually as like a gin drinker to incorporate kind of the novelty or how to actually make use of the novelty, would be to maybe give some more life to some of those bottle designs that they cycle through. Like if you think about Hendrix does a different summer solstice or different time period gin for the year, and you might not ever get to see some of those bottles again after you've consumed it and whatnot. I could think of a really awesome, like, every time you purchase one of the limited edition gin, almost like a stamp book. I don't know if maybe I'm dating myself by referencing that, but like,
I'm thinking like metaverse alcohol wine cellar room. That
well, even but you could also do it in something like, let's say if you had it, a limited run produced alcohol. Okay, I'm only going to allow people who have X amount of purchases, or like you can only get it if you've shown interest in select lines throughout time. Kind of like the same model that like luxury brands use. You can only purchase from us if you have purchased before or something like that. And
or you get that first inside look. And that's why it's a big one for marketing and just brand building and kind of creating some of that brand loyalty where if individuals were never registered with like Hendrix Gin before, now all of a sudden like all I have to do is fill out a form and then just kind of as I buy them, I get membership perks or kind of these VIP features. I think that like alcohol brands definitely will begin to kind of target that more in NFTs and the crypto space is a good segue because you're at least isolating majority of people that are more tech savvy when you are targeting that. So I think like the usability and actual like conversion will definitely show in that space as well.
well, you heard it here first, folks, or maybe you heard it from folks who are more technical and nerdy, but you definitely heard it in the most entertaining and comprehensive way here, is what I'll say. Um,
I hope.
with a nod towards entertaining, definitely. So I will cap that off and segue into the next segment just by asking, do you think that in, we'll say, a 10-year time frame that blockchain definitively has a place in F&B?
Yes, I really think um, when we're looking at a specific industry, we're going to have to be looking at the technology as a whole. And a big piece of it is going to be kind of like the bigger governments and how they go about implementing that initial set of regulatory framework for both the cryptocurrency space and the blockchain space, because it is kind of all hands off and cannot be interfered with, which is just historically speaking for governments
Not their
to
favorite?
go in that direction. It's not their favorite, but it is kind of the highest and moral good. Whether governments favor that or not is up to each individual one. But I think the regulatory components can be the biggest hurdle on the short term basis, and really kind of the different policies and politics of individual countries kind of it'll eventually have to balance out. But I think that's going to be the accelerator for the space as a whole.
Right on. Well, I would say it's not too controversial of an opinion, especially considering we've already seen some kind of proof of concept, as you mentioned, with Walmart and other cases. But these next ones might be a bit more, we'll say, less widely accepted. So, shall we jump into my favorite segment to do with you, food fight?
Ready?
All right. So I have the first one, and oh goodness, we have choices. Um, let's go and start. In and Out is overrated, and the fries are gross.
No, I think they've embellished themselves as that for the price point. I appreciate it as that West Coast burger. I don't know if it's a nostalgia of I'll land in California and like let's just grab In and Out on the way out of LAX. And to have done like animal style and kind of introduced the slop of it all while still kind of holding it together for the like $6 meal, I'm happy.
I hear you. I actually really enjoy an In and Out burger, whole grilled onion. That's how I do mine. But the fries are just not up to par. I'm sorry. I you have any fry that requires you to douse it in cheese and onions and basically anything else just means it's not. This goes back, by the way. I'm consistent. This goes back to my ketchup argument. Like, if you have to douse it with something to make it taste good,
We thought about that
then
one.
then at core you're saying that it's intrinsically not a quality food item.
But the animal style fries are like the end to the means. Like it's not about the non animal style fries. It's in itself
It's
that is the goal of the animal style
Are
fries.
animal style fries
I don't
technically
want to.
even on the
I don't.
menu?
No, that's the point. It goes back to the brand building, that nostalgia. It's like let me go and be like order this cool thing off the menu, um, and that's kind of how they like build out that like in and out culture. I feel like is by having them off the menu. But chances are most people that walk in there know what a double double animal style is, and I appreciate it.
Look, I don't want to make this seem as if I've got In and Out in my crosshairs. I got nothing wrong. There's it's a good establishment overall. I will stop there and I will eat there happily, but I will just say I will do so knowing that they dropped the ball on the fries. Sorry. Okay, cool. Um,
I have a fun in and out story to interject. In Kampot, Cambodia, which is the region of Cambodia known for its black pepper, where a lot of high end black pepper gets exported from, there is a restaurant called In and Out. Uh, the guy didn't care at all. He does burgers and fries, has an In and Out sign. His thing was, what are they going to do? Sue me. One time he had three gentlemen come into the store and they were like, "Oh, are you the owner?" They ordered their burgers, fries. Turns out one of the guy was general counsel for In and Out. And he's like, "Yeah, man. I mean, we can't see you in Cambodia, so good luck with the business."
did he like his burger at least? There were,
It's my In and Out story. I don't know. This was told to me by the owner as I kind of sat there, but I
did
chuckled.
you like the burger?
I think it's funny. Just I don't remember, so probably not, or else it'd be memorable.
Memorable story, unforgettable burger. Um,
I did have again. This is middle of nowhere Cambodia. Really good homemade pasta made by like an Italian guy that lived by himself with like 12 dogs and a couple of cows. And he's like, "Yeah, I like it here." And he cooked good Italian food, and it was called chow.
I do want to move on to the segment, but that seems like an entire story's worth of cast of characters. I'm mostly curious to hear about the cows. Um, okay, next one up on food fight. Tomatoes don't belong on burgers.
I agree.
Look at
I
that.
think the texture is not complimentary, and this is coming down to my specialty. I don't even love lettuce. I think at times it can belong on it, but it again is just a crunch of water that I do not want kind of bogging down the balance of the other ingredients. I am happy to remove the lettuce and tomatoes any day of the week. I'm also happy that it seems like we're on the same page.
Surprisingly, because people give me guff about how I get my burgers, but like now, what I will say, onions. I'm a big fan of onions on burgers. Um, I pickles as well. In the right circumstance, not like if I'm getting a general kind of like a mass produced burger, I might not go for the pickles. But if it's gonna be like a quality pickle, I'm good for it.
I'll never say no to the pickles, but I think the for like they have a place for me. For me, it's like an acidity neutralizer. It's like the acidity of the onions, or if they're caramelized, kind of like the sweetness. It'll kind of balance out a lot of the kind of like that strong taste of the meat and kind of the boldness and heaviness of the cheese. And that texture is like minor in comparison to like a sliced tomato. But to cap that off, I still think ketchup has its place there, just not the whole unbelievable to me.
Oh, why'd you have to keep going?
I had to. I
We were in
know,
alignment
but I needed to bring back my side of
for a
ketchup.
brief moment. But yeah, and by the way, audience, for if you don't know, and what Mark just gave a hint at is he's not only an expert at helping restaurant groups find success, navigating F&B's place in the blockchain, but also burgers, and probably of the
It,
three his favorite.
it is a self-proclaimed title, but self-proclaimed burger connoisseur. I think it just started. The backstory is it started with me living in New York City, where I had a burger at Minetta Tavern, and it's called the Black Label Burger, and it's just kind of one of those like high-end steakhouse burgers, and it just set off. I'm like, wow, this is great, and it's not. The place is known for its burger, but it's a French bistro. It's just an incredible burger where they actually give you like a bit of a stink eye if you ask for ketchup. But it's literally bread,
I wonder
onions,
why.
meat. That's it. I'll respect it there. The meat is just so rich. They just use some like I forget exactly what the blend is. It's like a nice piece of chuck. But they also use like some fat trimmings from some of the other steaks that they have for the steakhouse part
Mhm.
of it. If you Google it, there's a nice behind the scenes into how the actual burgers are made. But it just set off a cascade effect where for like my next few years living in New York City, I would just order a burger anywhere I could and kind of take a deep dive into it. Big fan of the Burger Show on YouTube with our lovely friend George Motz, where they go into a lot of the regional styles. A burger is kind of like from Japan, so that Oklahoma City slider. So I've been educating myself on it.
I didn't really consider to think that Japan had a regional burger, but now, I mean, why not?
And pizza.
That I Asia, I love you. I love you so much, Asia. I do not love what you do to pizza. Um,
There were some experts from that went in and classified this one place in Japan as having some of the best Neapolitan pizza in the world.
and
I can get the
I
name
believe it.
just so it sticks,
I
but
believe it. If you're going and hey, look, there's places I've had great pizza in Asia where people follow, some of the conventions of pizza. Um, but there is such a thing as a bad pizza, and I've seen it multiple times in Korea on multiple
in
occasions.
Asia, it's easy to come across it.
If you're
I think with Japan, it's a unique one because the culture just, um, not that it rewards perfectionism, but it strives for it. So you put a cuisine in the hands of a determined chef in Japan,
Mhm.
and chances are he will spend a majority of his life getting as close as he can to perfection. Um, Volume wise, doesn't happen a ton, but that's what kind of I think this was on David Chang's show on Netflix, but that's what happened with this pizza place where this guy dedicated his life to creating the perfect Neapolitan pizza. That's why I'm scared to buy a pizza oven because I might be in my backyard in Bali spending years trying to craft the perfect Neapolitan pizza.
I think you're just scared of happiness. I mean, this started as a podcast, but maybe this is. I think this started as a podcast, but maybe this is a redefining
A
moment for
therapy
you. Like,
session.
let's forget about the
I'll order that
cameras.
pizza
We're all
oven.
friends here. Um, I still think you should get the pizza oven. But goodness, there's so many fun ones to get in with this. How about pasta shapes don't matter?
Oh, of course they matter.
Can,
The I was watching pasta recipes. Depending on the sauce, you either want it to scoop more of the sauce. So something like a shell, like the medium shells, can actually be a great vehicle for like a nice chunky sauce. Whereas kind of like the spaghetti angel hairs, where if you're kind of doing just kind of like some olive oil, cracked pepper, but it's just lighter, where it being an actual vehicle is less important. They play a role depending on what's going into the pasta.
okay, and I hear you and I agree with you and everything you're saying is valid and makes perfect sense. But I just want to raise a counterpoint. You're cooking pasta at home and you don't have the type of pasta indicated. Do you stop what you're doing? But you
I
have another
have
type of
multiple
pasta.
pastas on hand.
Let's say you have a completely what's considered the imperfect pasta for that situation. Let's say in your case, you want to do like a thick sauce that you're hoping to get big bites of, but you're like, oh, I guess I only have angel hair. Are you gonna stop your cook for it?
No, but the meal is going to be me eating that pasta and then taking a spoon and like spooning the sauce. If it's not complimentary in that nature, I have like at a minimum like three types of pasta on hand,
I
and they're usually based around me knowing what sauces and recipes I make, and them being a vehicle for that sauce, or like something more that's like, okay, I'm just gonna have this with like shrimp, where it doesn't really matter of the shape entangling things.
I guess I'm sort of speaking contradictory in the sense that I generally pick the right pasta for the job, but I also kind of feel like while it does make a difference, it still doesn't matter.
Okay, make some mac and cheese with angel hair and let it. I want it to be like in a baking sheet, and then tell me it doesn't matter.
Uh,
It's not going to distribute in the cooking with the sauce, and you're just going to get a very weird consistency to where the cheese is in the mac if you use some kind of spaghetti.
I'm thinking
That's a
in the
big
sense
one.
of pasta for baked stuff. I mean, you
Okay, it doesn't have to be a baked mac and cheese. It'll still kind of, I guess, if it's a loose cheesy sauce, I think I'm right here.
I think you're putting too many variables to trying to make your point. If I digress, though, I because I just
This,
wouldn't do it.
this is a big one for me. I think about this a lot. Like I think about my pasta shapes pretty often.
I can't say I've had that same train of thought, and this is good. This is why you're so passionate about that opinion. I'm glad I included it. Um, since you touched upon it, I'll bring it up, and we'll end with this one perhaps. Mac and cheese is overrated.
My brain wants to say yes, but my heart wants to say no. I'm gonna go with a yes, and I will be watching this video and regretting my answer. But it's because I live in a place where you can't get good cheese, so I'm just constantly disappointed, or I go broke making a mac and cheese, um, because you just need like pounds of four different cheeses. And yeah, I'd say at the moment, mac and cheese is overrated.
Wow. Oh goodness, I feel like we watched a whole character arc there. So when I first said it, I felt like you were like, this guy's talking crazy. I can't believe I have to be civil in this discussion when this guy's talking such craziness out of his mouth. And then I kind of watched you transition into like resolving yourself. Where like, well, I'm just not gonna get good mac and cheese that easily anyway. Yeah, it's overrated.
You hit it because I had mac and cheese today, and it was
Oh,
like I just got it and looked at it, and I knew it was going to be disappointed. And it's just one of those things where it was like a little side dish on the menu, and I'm like, I'm going to get it to try it to just continue my verification of most mac and cheese just sucks around here.
it's like a toxic
And
relationship.
yeah,
You keep going
continued, and
back even though you're gonna get hurt every time.
yeah, I'd say the mac and cheese is the toxic X of food in my life, where it's like I want to find for it to work, but it just never does. There's good ones out there. I'll get to it eventually, but
Hey Mark, just so you know, there's plenty other mac in the sea. There's plenty other
yeah,
mac in the cheese.
maybe outside of Indonesia.
Um, if you ever next America trip, I'll give you some recommendations in mac and cheese. I have
I just want like that. I'll even go to Cheesecake Factory. That's an easy one. It'll be 3,000 calories, but just that barbecue side mac and cheese. That's something I miss.
and I promise you, any recipes that I provide to you for mac and cheese will not have angel hair pasta. That's I again, it's one of those things. I think it doesn't matter too much but I still respect it weirdly enough just because I feel weird if I don't, if that makes sense.
Fair, fair. Definitely hit a chord with the shapes. It might tie into like some childhood nostalgia that I'm not even thinking through right now. But I had like I remember even like my mother telling me, "Yeah, when you were younger, this was your favorite shape." And like I have, if I ever see it in a supermarket, it just hits like that. I think we talked about this at a previous podcast. Just kind of like the nostalgia of eating something. It's like, do you want to eat it because you want to eat it, or you want to eat it because it triggers that like bout of nostalgia and memories?
I,
So with pasta shapes can do that.
I've absolutely been getting that, in this trip back to the States, like everything chili cheese fries has been a crazy, like, whoa, I take a bite and I'm eight again. Um, it's, uh, drinking Faygo is another one for me. It's weird to have it, and it's like, huh, I didn't appreciate those notes to it, but it also still the exact same thing I remember. Um, Verner's is not one of those. That one's a bit more of a complicated relationship that I need to unpack. Um, but yeah, there's a lot of those where they're kind of multi-sensory experiences because it starts off on your palate but ends up in your memory, and I think that's always a fun thing when food can do that.
Yeah, and I think going back to kind of those when we were talking about you're having a persona in mind because you're building like a fine dining menu. Kind of, if your goal is to do that, and you see this in Room for Dessert, it's this I want to say it's season 4, episodes 4 of Chef's Table. Will Goldfarb is the number one pastry chef in the world. It's here in Bali. You're eating a fine dining 21 set menu, but they're using like Groot as a serving dish for a little dessert, or they're using some fun play on like 90s chocolate, whether it's from Indonesia or like the Western world, and kind of triggering those nostalgic bouts as part of like that culinary journey.
And for reference,
So,
the Groot he's
um,
referring to is the character from the Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy movie, who's a talking and in some cases dancing tree. So yeah, they're
yeah.
having fun with it for sure.
And I think at one point, and they basically have seasons, and every 2 seasons per year, and the menu changes. And I've seen like Power Ranger figures involved, like holding this like Michelin star like wafer. So they get really fun with it, and I feel like that's part of the creative process in bringing a diner what they didn't know they wanted, which was scan back at some childhood memories
And I think that
or not.
you know, and this could open up and a whole can of worms and a whole podcast topic in itself. But there's something also to being true to yourself and having a voice in terms of as a restaurateur, as a chef, and in terms of like you know being able to find those people who are going to resonate with it. It might not start necessarily as, oh hey, let me go ahead and try and make something for him. It might be let me go ahead and make the food that I absolutely know and love that is out there, and then impressing it onto those people and finding those people who may want to go out there and try something new. Um, so
Exactly. And I feel like some of the best meals in the world, that's exactly the mindset that kind of perpetuates them to being the best XYZ restaurant for that cuisine.
it's when the voice matches the taste of the listener, or in this case, of the diner. So absolutely. Well, with that, thanks again for joining us, Mark. A pleasure as always. And
Always happy to be
just so
here.
you know, if ever you get too much Zen in your life, I have still a lengthy list of food fight topics to squabble with you over at any moment. So ready to throw down the gauntlet again.
I'm at peace for now, but for the next podcast, I'm ready. I'll come ready,
I just imagine you're going to be
armed with good answers.
a week from now eating macaroni and cheese and just thinking about it with like angel hair pasta.
Gotta
And you're
find
like,
the right
I
one.
can't believe he would say that. Goodness.
The ketchup one still comes to mind. Like I even have, like restaurant style ketchup bottles. That's the kind of ketchup bottle I have at home because I don't worship ketchup, but I really respect having ketchup. on my food. So you struck a chord with that one.
Sacrilege. Um, but goodness, we will go in peace in our separate directions for now. A pleasure as
Yeah, we
always.
will.
And yeah, thanks for joining and watching, everyone. And we hope to see you on the next episode of Late Night Snacks.
Thanks, y'all.
Cheers.